Do you know which high school has produced the most national champions since 1999? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you all about that. So let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's up? My name is Josiah, and I'm a wrestling stats freak. And on this channel, on Fanco Wrestling, we dive into all of these stats on wrestling news, tips, and lifestyle. And I'm so excited to share with you in this series of videos analyzing these stats dating back to the national tournament in 1999 when the official weight changes took effect. So since that time, 1999 to 2019, I'm going to be analyzing all of these things, best high school, best college, best state since that time, in producing the highest caliber of wrestler in national champions. In this video, we're talking about which high school produced the most national champions. Now, I'm going to go down this list and tell you exactly which high school is the number one. And there is a clear front runner as the number one high school for producing national champions. Is the high school in Pennsylvania? Is it in Michigan? Is it in New Jersey? Where do you think it's from? I'm going to get into that. First of all, I think it's important to note that as I dive into these stats, there's a clear distinction between the number of titles and the number of individuals who have produced those titles. So of course, an individual can produce multiple titles, as in, Kelsi Anderson has 4 national titles. So of course, his high school is going to have, in the stats show there are 4 national titles. Well, I think it's a little bit more fair and better for the stats to show how many individuals have won national titles from the high school. So it's not just one individual. It's almost like an extreme point, because a couple of honorable mentions that I'll get into, Wasatch High School out of Utah, which is where Kelsi Anderson's from, Monroeville High School in Ohio, which is where Logan Stieber's from. Of course, he's also a 4-time national champion. And then Lansing, New York, which is from where Kyle Dake's from, also a 4-time national champion. Those 3 4-time national champions since 1999. So they're the only national champions from their high school. So those are the honorable mentions, which, I think is important to note. But let's actually get into a lot of these schools. Now, a lot of these schools are pretty much tied for 2 individuals from a certain high school. Some of them have more, titles overall. Some schools have only 2 titles, some 3, some 4, depending on the multiples. So going to this tied for, I guess, number 4 spot, number 3 spot, whatever you want to talk about, tied for number 3. I'm going to go into what the high school is, how many champions they have, and who's some of their known wrestlers. First of all is Apple Valley out of Minnesota. Now, Apple Valley is a pretty well-known high school, I believe, in the wrestling community, especially nowadays. They have 2 individual champions and 2 actual titles. So 1 title each, and these wrestlers are Seth Gross and Mark Hall. Now, Seth Gross is the last champion from Apple Valley, winning in 2018. You may also know currently wrestling is Gable Steveson, and you're going to have all 3 of those wrestlers competing for a title next year. So that number may bump right up and get them, to that number 1 spot. Next up is Sunnyside. Sunnyside, Arizona. In Arizona, they also have 2 individual titles and 2 total titles. And this is, you have a couple guys here. Their last title was actually from 2006, whenever Nate Gallick from Iowa State won. But then you also have Eric Larkin out of ASU. So he's from Arizona, wrestled at ASU. Talking a little bit more, going into a couple of these other schools, Wheeling Jesuit. Wheeling Jesuit, you may know as the place where Iron Man is hosted, the high school tournament, one of the toughest tournaments in the country amongst Powerade, Beast of the East, Reno tournament champions. But Iron Man, Wheeling Jesuit, and they actually have produced some of the most national champions. And this is their last notable win was Mike Pasillo from Ohio State in 2008. You also have Joe Heskett from Iowa State. Going up the line, you have Arrowhead. Arrowhead in Wisconsin. Now, if you know a little bit about Arrowhead, you know that there are 2 well-known brothers from that high school. Now, Arrowhead, of course, in Wisconsin, 2 guys there, Ben Askren, who has 2 national titles. He wrestled at Missouri, and his brother, who is actually the last national champion from this high school in 2010, Max Askren, who also wrestled at Missouri. Now, a little bit going up the list to Cambridge Asante High School in Minnesota. This high school is on the list, and let me know below in the comments, is your high school on this list? Are you looking to become a national champion? Who do you think the next national champion from one of these high schools will be? Because I think it's interesting to see which high schools have produced recently as opposed to, a long time ago. And the number 1 school is looking pretty strong. However, going through this list, Cambridge Asante out of Minnesota, another school out of Minnesota, just like Apple Valley. Cambridge Asante, the last notable win was Luke Becker in 2002. You also have Toni Nelson, who both of them wrestled actually at Minnesota. Toni Nelson was a 2-time national champion, and I think this is very interesting to go into the next spot because Arrowhead, Cambridge Asante, Franklin Regional, and this next school, while they have 2 individual titles, they actually have 3 total national titles. Franklin Regional, you may know their last title was actually this year under Spencer Lee. Now, Spencer Lee is a 2-time national champion, wrestles at Iowa. You also have Nico Megaludis, who wrestled at Penn State, is a national champion. And then Mount Carmel, Illinois. The last champion was in 2000, Tony Davis from UNI. You have another Iowa wrestler, not at UNI, but Iowa, and TJ Williams, who is a 2-time national champion. So it's been quite some time since Mount Carmel actually had a national champion, and we can, project maybe they'll have a national champion over the upcoming years. I'm really not sure, But then making a little bit of a jump, these next couple of schools have four total titles, but only 2 individual champions. I told you it's tough to have a high school that produces multiple national champions. Now, All-Americans is a different story, and the reason I didn't go into All-Americans is, there's just so many stats for that, but I believe, national champion is the pinnacle of college wrestling, not world wrestling, not the Olympics, not anything like that, but the pinnacle of college wrestling, and that's why I'm diving into these stats. But next up, Lima High School. You may know 2 guys here, Chris Pendleton, a 2-time national champion, and Isaiah Martinez, wrestled at Illinois, also a 2-time national champion. Both of them from Lima High School in California. In the next school, for me, as I was diving into the stats, it was kind of out there. A school in Idaho, okay? Idaho, not a school, not necessarily a wrestling state that you'd think of. Typically you think of PA, Ohio, New Jersey, California. Not necessarily a wrestling state. However, Sandpoint, Idaho is the high school. Sandpoint, you have Jared Lawrence and Jake Roseholt, a 3-time national champion from Oklahoma State, Jared Lawrence from Minnesota. So this Idaho actually producing one of the best high schools for producing national champions. And I think that this is important to note, this is where some schools may look to recruit some guys, from these type of high schools. Now, of course, they have to have a good record. They have to show maybe there's something in the water at a couple of these places, and that's why they're so good at producing national champions in the long run. Next up, a major wrestling school out of Ohio, St. Ed's. So St. Ed's has produced, they have 2 individuals, 4 total titles. Their last known title was Dean Heil in 2017. He's a 2-time national champion from Oklahoma State. Then you also have Ryan Burton, a 2-time national champion from Michigan. And we're going to make one more jump here. This is a clear number 2 spot until we get to the number 1 spot. The clear number 2 spot here is Davidson High School out of Michigan. They have produced 3 individual national champions since 1999 under the current weight changes. And do you know who it is? Their last champ was actually John Reeder in 2011 from Iowa State. Brent Metcalf was also a 2-time national champion from Iowa, and then Paul Donahue from Nebraska. All 3 of those guys hailing from Davidson High School in Michigan. in the number one high school. And I just want to let you know, before I reveal this, that in this series of videos, I'm going into the high schools, the home schools, and that video is coming up soon. It's coming up right after this. So the number one high school in the country for producing national champions is Blair Academy out of New Jersey, a prep school. And, a couple of these schools in this top 10 list are prep schools, because they can recruit guys, they can get guys to come to their school, but Blair is the clear number one choice, not choice, but stats show that they are the number one high school for producing national champions. They've produced 4 national champions since 1999, and they have 7 total titles. So they have 3 more titles than the school in second place. Who are some wrestlers from this high school? Well, you have Steve Mocco from Iowa, 2-time national champion. Mark Perry, a 2-time national champion from Iowa. Kellen Russell, 2-time national champion from Michigan. And then Zach Esposito, who is a national champion from Oklahoma State. So Blair is the number one high school for producing national champions. Are you surprised? Now, if you liked this video and want to see more stats from the best stats from 1999 to 2019, make sure you check out this next video where I dive into where these wrestlers are coming from, which hometown has produced the most national champions since 1999.